look at the genealogy of American presidents, it is utterly astonishing. There are 260 million Americans. This interview was done several years ago, obviously. There are 260 million Americans at the moment, and if you add up all those who have called themselves Americans since 1776, it will run into hundreds and hundreds of millions. Well, 42 of those hundreds of millions have actually become president of the United States. And you would think, on the law of averages alone, that those 42 would have some tremendous genetic diversity. But they don't. According to Burke's Peerage, the Bible of aristocratic and royal genealogy based in London, every American election since and including George Washington in 1789 has been won by the candidate with the most European royal genes. 33 of the 42 are genetically related to two people, Charlemagne, king, the most famous monarch of what we call France, and Alfred the Great, the King of England. They're the two countries overwhelmingly, France and Britain, out of which these bloodlines came in Europe. Okay. Where to start with this? Okay, first of all, I haven't really done the research here, but all 42 presidents were the ones in their race with the most genes tracing back to these European guys. Didn't we ever have a couple of races where the same two guys ran against each other and a different guy won? I'm not really positive, but somewhere in the primaries at least.
Perhaps in the primaries. I don't know that it's occurred.
But
well, there's a number of problems there. The first is that he makes this claim that you would expect there to be broad diversity.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's necessarily true.
I don't either.
Because there are certain qualifications that are almost required for any candidate to be reasonably considered electable.
Yeah.
And that automatically narrows the focus.
I think I can sum it up pretty succinctly. For the most part, every president of the United States has been a rich white guy.
Yeah.
And that isn't the most genetically diverse group in the world. I mean, not only because of the white part, but also because, as much as we might like to talk about the American dream in general, the easiest way to have a lot of money is to inherit it from your parents.
Right.
And that tends to reduce the bloodlines. I'm just talking generally. I'm not saying that there is no American dream, but that tends to reduce the bloodlines of really rich guys.
And also, as much as we like to talk about democracy, we do have a kind of aristocratic class
right.
Of professional politicians, and the sons and children of professional politicians naturally have much greater likelihood of entering politics themselves and being successful.
Just look at Kennedy's, look at Bush's, and now look at Clinton's potentially.
People tend to run in similar circles. They have friends. They do favors. There is a conspiracy in some regard. I just don't know how you can get from. First of all, his claim that there should be diversity. I don't buy it.
Right.
And second of all, even if we were to expect diversity, the claim that the people who were most related to royalty are the ones who won.
Yeah, I was going to mention that if you read Richard Dawkins' book, The Ancestor's Tale, he, I'm not going to make as broad a claim because I got a bunch of odd stares in the studio before, but I will say that according to Richard Dawkins, people in general are a lot more interrelated than you would think. So if you go take somebody like Charlemagne as an example, Charlemagne was a king, and kings tend to have a lot of power, and power attracts women. Kings generally have a lot of dalliances, and those, so they have more children than most people. So in other words, the odds are pretty good that any one person somewhere along the line has some royalty in their blood.
Yeah, and going back also looking at American society, yes, it's the land of plenty and opportunity and all this other stuff, but the rich do get richer and the poor do get poorer in general. So this idea that we do have class structures, and some people born more privileged or more likely.
Informal
Yeah,
class structure.
it's nothing structured and nothing you can't break through with effort.
By the way, speaking of the reptoids being part of our ruling class, there's an absolutely hilarious video online, which I've also linked from the Atheist Experience blog, that shows George Bush in an interview like having red eyes and slits for pupils. And if you watch it and you're not assuming that he's a reptoid person, you might just think, huh, he's got red eyes just like when I do a bad job taking a photograph. And the video quality is kind of not very good. And as he moves around and shifts into different lights, you get different video glitches. But if you think that, then you're probably part of the reptoid conspiracy too, because these people's theory is that George Bush, I don't know, doesn't realize he's on camera, maybe? So he's shape-shifting into a reptoid right in front of the camera because he can't control himself, and yet nobody else ever noticed it except during this thing that looks very much like a typical video glitch.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was editing done with regard to the pupils on this one.
I don't think there was.
Oh,
I think that a camera can do that. Because I just saw one recently with John Edwards in it. And it's even more subtle, but I mean, if you look hard enough, you can say, yeah, that looks like John Edwards has slits for eyes too.
I'll have to take another look at it later. But one of the things is that I guess the claim is that as he gets older, it's harder and harder for him to maintain his human form.
That doesn't explain John Edwards, though.
And it also doesn't explain why we don't find reptiles in old folks' homes.
Well, if they're in old folks' homes, then they don't have as much money, so they're not part of the reptilian royalty or something. That's it. I mean, pretty much, that's a good point to make right there, is that if you start out with the assumption that, that this theory of yours is true, then first of all, any facts you come up with can appear to jibe with your theory, and that's called confirmation bias. You basically focus on the things that do appear to support your theory and kind of gloss over or ignore things that don't appear to support your theory. Like, for example, the thousands of videos of George H.W. Bush not looking like a reptile. Yeah. There's a lot more of those, but you can pretty much ignore them.
It's like they sit around saying, if this were true, what kind of things would we expect? Well, these reptiles would want to make the earth warmer. Hey, they're doing that.
There you go.
Holy cow.
Except according to David Icke, the earth is not getting warmer.
Oh.
So, no, what he believes is that there's a conspiracy among liberals to destroy industry, which actually is a fairly typical conspiracy theory that's not limited to reptile-believing people.
Okay. One of the bits about the reptilian thing is,
yeah.
and I don't know if you found this in your research, but I did during the painful day that I spent reading up on this. They take photographs of people,
yes,
and run a standard Photoshop filter on the photographs, and I think they're using find edges and something else, and it produces this kind of weird-looking photograph that they then interpret. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can see, here these edges form something, and this shows that this person is a reptile.
I thought that was a way of finding, like, demons in empty rooms or something like that. I guess that's similar.
It works for reptiles, too, evidently.